So anyway, those are the new permit limits that we're going to be designing for, that we need to worry about. Okay, and like John said, they're working on rulemaking for total inorganic nitrogen. So as I do this planning, I'm saying, okay, what fits into this? We know we're probably going to be here, so I keep that in the back of my mind. Here's what, we don't want to do something now and have to redo it because this comes down the road later. So we know it's there. And I mentioned a little earlier that there's a potential for reduced ammonia that because of the snails and mussels. It's a new EPA rule that's coming down. The total inorganic nitrogen, since ammonia is part of that, lowering ammonia in the process is going to be important anyway, maybe even below what our permit limit is now to reach that. So we're taking that into effect. They're currently working on a TMDL on Utah Lake. They've been working on it for years.
Can you explain that, Brad?
So what I call it or what it really is, because TMDL to me stands for too many damn lawyers.
There you go.
So really what it stands for is for total maximum daily load. So that's what that abbreviation stands for. And basically what happens is the state monitors water quality. They have these parameters as, you know, whether, and it's, could be oxygen, it can be metals, it can be all these different parameters, bacteria, and they go sample for that on an ongoing basis. And if they have a water body that goes below what that standard is, they list it as impaired. They call it the 303D list, and it's listed as there's a problem. So basically the idea is, and if we take Utah Lake, it was listed for TDS, total dissolved solids, which is salt in the lake, which it's kind of interesting. I'm going to get on my soapbox a little bit about that one because Utah, the limit is 1,200 milligrams per liter, and that is set to protect irrigation water. So once you get higher salt than that, it causes crops not to grow well. So if you look at most of the incoming streams into Utah Lake, it runs about 600 milligrams per liter, which is fine. But on the effluent, it's about 1,200 milligrams per liter, which is interesting. You go, well, how does that happen? About 50% of the water in Utah Lake evaporates. When it evaporates, the salt stays in there. So Utah Lake's a fairly shallow, large surface area, and it basically concentrates the salts. So the other thing Utah Lake's listed for is phosphorus. So phosphorus historically has been kind of interesting to me anyway, because instead of saying the standard for a lake is 0.05 milligrams per liter, they have what they call an indicator value. And the indicator value is actually 0.025 in lakes, and they use it as an indicator value because, like John talked about in that process, when you have too much fertilizer, algae grows, then it dies, and then takes the oxygen out. Well, so they just pick that number as an indicator, and they'll list it on the 303D list and say, okay, if it's above this, this is a problem. But they anticipate to see low DOs to go along with that because they expect algae to grow and to die. So Utah Lake is listed for phosphorus, but it wasn't listed for DO. So they're looking at the phosphorus and they're doing a lot of work on it because, and the whole ecosystem is very interesting because right now they're doing the carp removal, and the carp tear up the bottom and prevent some things from growing and keep it kind of more brown than green, but as times it turns green. So there's a lot of information there, and they're working hard on trying to figure out where it needs to be, but it's not done yet. When they take care of the carp issues, then all of a sudden if the carp's gone, is the lake going to turn really green because it has high phosphorus in it and have the DO. So there's a lot going there. So anyway, the total maximum daily load, TMDL, they list the 303D list and basically says, okay, now we're going to study this parameter and figure out how much this water body can actually accept. So Utah Lake is in the middle of that process, and there's a lot of things going on. But from our standpoint, what it means is we know right now that they've said we got to get our phosphorus to 1 milligram per liter, but it may go down in the future. How far down, we don't know, but it's on the radar that it's possibly there. So just kind of a quick update, kind of where your plant came from. In the 1930s, the plant wasn't at the site it was now, but they installed an Imhoff tank. Prior to that, you pretty much had direct discharge into the streams and into Utah Lake with no treatment at all. And then in the 1965, they started the existing plant and built basically a trickling filter plant there, which gave a higher level of treatment than the previous tank. And that worked until about 1985, at which point they expanded the plant again and added some additional trickling filters and some additional clarification and a little bit more process. Then in 2000, we upgraded again and added activated sludge. So 2000 was about 15 years ago. The design life at that time was 20 years. So we're kind of 5 years away from where we thought that was going to be anyway. So doing the planning we're doing now is kind of right on time with that. So you have time to get the planning done, get construction done. So we're kind of on the schedule that really we anticipated back in 2000. So this is kind of what I'm looking at your plant right now. Probably the other issue I didn't mention, working with Jeff, we have this old plant, we're trying to utilize a lot of it, but there's some pieces that were put in. If you look, you see on the bottom, we got the red and the green, and then the existing, what we call primary clarifiers. So the existing one, there's one of them right now. So if something happens with that and they have to shut it off, it doesn't work anymore. So at that point, the plant can't treat everything it needs to. So basically, the red are things that we're calling redundant. So it's given us, we're putting some things in there so that we can take one offline and still be able to have the plant function, so we don't go for a month and not be able to make the discharge permit. So that's, in addition to the permit changes, in addition to the nutrient changes, we're also looking at adding some processes to get some redundancy. And we're also looking at taking it out another 20 years so there's growth. So we have the primary clarifier as one of the redundant systems that we think we need to get in there. Right now, we have that old trickling filter that was put in back in the 80s, and basically it's wore out, and it doesn't help us with the nutrient stuff. So that's why we're looking at putting the clarifiers where those are. But once it's gone, we also need to increase our biological capacity to replace that. So we have a tank that we're showing 3 trains. One is redundant, one is for permit requirements, and one is for expansion. So basically, we're looking at a bigger tank that we can grow bugs in, that we put air in, that gives us some more trains so we get redundancy, gives us more air so we can take care of the oxygen, or the ammonia, and also the regular fluids that are coming in. So in addition, off the right, the blue tank is what we call, right now I'm calling anoxic anaerobic. That's the process. One of them helps us with phosphorus, and one of them helps us with the total inorganic nitrogen. So that tank could be phased. So some of the stuff I haven't done yet is figure out how we phase this. Do we do it all at once, or we do this piece here and now? So that's part of what my study is going to come out. But generally, that tank is going to be there. For phosphorus removal, we can put in chemical, but if we make that tank a little bigger, we may be able to take some of it out biologically, which will reduce our chemical costs. So that's part of what I get to evaluate. We have a building there that's going to hold blowers and that chemical to remove the phosphorus. We're expanding some of the headworks. You see the green on there, that's where the plants come in, and that was sized for the 2000, so to go out we need to be a little bit bigger there. Our digestion capacity I'm showing is red, is redundant, but it's redundant and expansion, kind of both. So right now he's got 3 digester tanks that we take those bacteria that we grow and basically let them break down some more. But we get a lot of grit in there, and every 4 or 5 years you have to take it offline, clean it out, clean all that grit out. Well, that takes about a month to do. So when we have that tank gone for a month, we don't really have the capacity we need to do that. We're also looking at covering the gap and the thickening facility there. And we're looking at some additional clarification, another final clarifier to give them some more redundancy there. I think he had a problem with the drive right now, and they're struggling trying to take that down and repair it because the other old clarifier that's there doesn't have the capacity to take the full flow in the plant. We're also looking at expansion in the sand filter building, so that gets a little bigger. That's an expansion part. And then we have our chlorine contact basin, and like I said, we mentioned that the chlorine limit's going down. So there's two ways to do that. You can either dechlorinate or put in UV. So we're right now thinking we'll probably put ultraviolet light in to disinfect, which gets rid of the chlorine, so there's no more safety stuff associated with having that gaseous chlorine on site, and we don't have to put sulfur dioxide on site to dechlorinate. So we're kind of leaning that way. So that, right now, that's the big picture, kind of what I'm looking at to do to this plant to get us down the road for a ways. Some of the permit limits in that, I want to get those ironed out before I can get the exact sizes of all these tanks, so I can get all the costs put together in detail. But generally, that's where we're going.
So on the timeline, you said that we're looking to take it out another 20 years. Is that 20 years from now or 20 years from when we start?
20 years from when we get, I think the timeline I'm looking at is, I think I'm looking at 2040. I'm trying to remember that. So it's, you know, I'm figuring about 5 years from now, everything will be in and done. It's going to be kind of that kind of time frame for some of this anyway. I know Jeff wants to get some done sooner because of the redundancy stuff, but so, you know, I'm building roughly that window. And the hard part is if you guys tell me exactly what your population is in that 20 years, I'll tell you exactly what we need. So since I know that's a real fuzzy crystal ball, and it always is, I mean, we say 20 years, but if you grow really fast, it may be a little less, it may be a little bit more. And even on the last one, I think, you know, you guys brought Elk Ridge into the plant, and that reduced that time frame from what we were planning in 2000 when we planted. So
if we're looking at a regionalization, with what you've got here, is that going to handle that?
So I talked to Bruce yesterday that's working on some of the regional stuff, and we're actually planning on getting together next week. So the stuff I have here will handle it. We just got to pick the number and make sure that all those tanks are the right size to do it, and make sure they don't grow. You know, right now I think there's a little bit of room there, so we can grow enough to probably do that. But I need to verify some of his numbers and stuff. So I'm coordinating with him on that right now.
So if we're talking,
that would include Salem?
That could include Salem. So we decide we go that way. Some of these tanks get bigger. If they don't go, then they don't get big to include them.
Because we've been talking quite serious with Salem and a little bit of Spanish Fork.
Right.
So I know you talked about a fuzzy crystal ball, but as far as numbers go, do we have any idea what we would expect for that to cost?
I haven't put any real numbers to that yet. And, you know, some of these things that we're talking about, Salem coming in, do we do that or not? You know, we're kind of, so I haven't really, I'm trying to get the permits tied down so I can get those sizes so I don't have to do those numbers 3 or 4 times with things changing. So I don't have a real good number for that.
Brad, can you or John state out loud what the consequences are if we don't meet the standard by 2020?